Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss one topic which is very important nowadays, that is DNA barcoding for species identification. So I am Dr. Pankaj Chetia. I am Assistant Professor of Department of Life Sciences, Dibrugarh University. Now, all of us know that what is a barcode? Okay, a barcode is a method of representing data in a visual or machine readable form. Initially, barcodes represented data by varying the widths and spacings of parallel lines like this one. So initially, barcodes used to look like this, but nowadays, two-dimensional variants of the barcodes have also been developed, and these are also known as the QR code. So these are made up of some rectangles, dots, hexagons, or other geometric patterns. Now, we all are familiar with barcodes. Whenever you visit a shopping mall and you purchase a particular item, the shopkeeper, he doesn't write any detail about the product. He simply scans the barcode printed on the product or the item, and the computer automatically recognizes the item, and all the details including price, manufacturing date, batch number, everything is uh, uh, printed on your bill. Okay, so the main purpose of the barcode is automation. That means using some computer software or other tools, one product can be identified. A similar approach was used for species identification, and that technique is known as DNA barcoding. So DNA barcoding is a method of species identification using a short section of DNA from a specific gene or several genes. Okay. So we try to identify a particular species based on a particular region of the DNA from that particular species. So this technique is known as DNA barcoding. In 2003, Paul Hebert, okay, his full name was Professor Paul D.N. Hebert. He was from University of Guelph, Canada. So he, for the first time, proposed the term DNA barcoding, and he used a particular gene, cytochrome C oxidase 1, for identification of living organisms. This is not that Hebert was the first to use cytochrome oxidase gene for species identification. Folmer et al. Used this particular gene for species identification in 1994 itself. But Professor Hebert in 2003, he especially proposed the term DNA barcoding, and he used this technique for species identification based on the cytochrome C oxidase 1 gene. Okay, so this is that is why Professor Hebert is also known as the father of DNA barcoding. Now, if you see, the organism may be any organism. It may be a plant, it may be an animal, it may be a bacteria, it may be a fungus. So all living organisms are made up of cells. So that is why cells are known as the basic unit of life. So even if for unicellular organism, there will be at least one cell. Okay. Inside the cell, in case of plant cell, we find DNA inside the nucleus, okay, then inside the mitochondria, as well as inside the chloroplast or plastids. Okay, so in case of a plant cell, we find DNA in three organelles inside the nucleus, inside the mitochondria, and inside the chloroplast. Whereas in case of animal cell, we find DNA inside the nucleus as well as inside the mitochondria. Okay. Now, for DNA barcoding of plants, generally a portion of DNA from the chloroplast DNA is studied, and in case of animals, a portion of DNA from the mitochondrial DNA is studied. Okay, so this is one chloroplast and this is one mitochondria, and we extract its DNA, be it from chloroplast or be it from mitochondria. After extracting, DNA is DNA, it's a double helical structure. So we concentrate on a particular portion of the DNA, not the entire chloroplast DNA or not the entire mitochondrial DNA. We concentrate on a particular portion or section of DNA of which the size is around 700 to 1000 base pairs, and based on that particular sequence, okay, one species can be identified, and this technique is known as DNA barcoding. So the technique involves the collection of tissue sample or bulk sample. It may be a mixture of several organisms or environmental sample. So first step is the DNA extraction. There are several techniques for extraction of DNA from organisms, like phenol chloroform method, or for plants CTAB method is there. So after extracting DNA, next is selection of marker. Marker means based on which portion of the DNA we will identify the organism. Okay. The marker DNA region must have some characteristic feature, like within a species it must be conserved, and suppose within a genus but within different species under a particular genera, there will be some sort of differences, but there will be some sort of similarity also. But in comparison to intra-specific variation, the interspecific variation will be more. Similarly, if you think of several genera under a particular family, okay, the intra-generic variation will be less than the intergeneric variation within a particular family. So based on some studies for animal species, the cytochrome oxidase 1 gene, cytochrome C oxidase 1 gene, has been proposed as a very good marker for identification of animal species. But in case of plants, it has been found that one particular marker is not sufficient. So we may have to use 3-4 markers. Like most commonly used marker in case of plants is RBCL, that is the gene which codes for Rubisco large unit. Okay, it is a chloroplast DNA, chloroplast gene, and similarly METK gene is used. There are several other genes, and in animals, as I have told you, COX1 gene is used. COX1 is a mitochondrial gene. So based on some specific set of primers, we try to amplify those RBCL gene or METK gene or COX1 gene using PCR amplification, using polymerase chain reaction. Then after amplifying, we check whether the desired product is amplified or not. We check it in agarose gel electrophoresis. Then we go for DNA sequencing. Okay, we go for DNA sequencing of the amplicon with the same set of primers which were used for PCR amplification. Then after DNA sequencing, the sequences are obtained, and after obtaining the sequence, we can go for similarity searches, like you can perform BLAST against your GenBank database. GenBank is a very popular database which stores the nucleic acid sequence. Now, you can search for similar sequences. With your sequence as a query sequence, you can search for similar sequences in GenBank database. And GenBank will tell you what is the extent of similarity and with which sequence your sequence is similar. Or in the next stage, you can go for phylogenetic tree construction to identify the species. Okay, so this is the overview of the methodology used in DNA barcoding studies. Now, there is a similar terminology which is also known as DNA metabarcoding. In metabarcoding, see, suppose there is a mixed sample, like there is a mixture of algal species in aquatic body, and while collecting, you could not purify it. Well, okay, it is a mixed sample, that is fine. You go for DNA extraction, so that DNA will also be a mixture of several species. Then you amplify it using those primers. Then after amplification, you will get several sequences. You will get different sequences. Then based on the sequence, you will perform BLAST, or you will perform phylogenetic analysis. You will construct phylogenetic trees, and individual species may be identified. So this is known as metabarcoding. And in case of DNA barcoding, it is a pure sample. The DNA is from one organism only, and it can be identified easily. In metabarcoding, it is a mixed sample, and you will get several sequences, and based on those sequences, the organism can be identified. So, some commonly used markers. Some commonly used markers in case of animals, as I have already told you, cytochrome C oxidase 1 gene is the most popular. Then cytochrome B is also there, 12S rRNA gene, 16S rRNA gene. Then in case of plants, MATK, Rubisco large unit, then PSBA tRNH intergenic spacer. Okay, then ITS, internal transcribed sequence. Then in case of bacteria, again CO1. Then there are 16S is a very commonly used marker gene in case of bacteria. In case of fungi, ITS, 18S. Then in case of protists, again ITS, RBCL, these genes can be used. These are some commonly used genes for DNA barcoding studies, and these are known as markers. Okay. Now, from the list of the markers, you will notice that most of the marker genes are non-nuclear DNA. Then you may ask me, why mostly we go for non-nuclear DNA as DNA marker? Why do we generally select non-nuclear DNA as marker DNA? Nowadays, some nuclear DNA is also selected, but mostly non-nuclear DNA is selected as marker DNA. The reason is the mitochondrial DNA, suppose mitochondrial DNA, it is comparatively more conserved than the nuclear DNA. Why? Because the mitochondrial DNA is of maternal origin. Okay, suppose the sperm fertilizes the egg, only this portion of the sperm cell contributes, whereas the mitochondria is present in this portion. So mitochondria do not get transferred to the zygote. As a result, the zygotes will not have mitochondria from the sperm cell or the parental germ cell, means paternal germ cell. So the mitochondria will have, the zygote will have mitochondria only from the egg cell or the maternal germ cell. Even if the paternal mitochondria gets transferred to the zygote, there is some mechanism which degrades the paternal mitochondria. As a result, the only the egg contributes to mitochondria and mitochondrial DNA to zygote. That is why the mitochondrial DNA is more conserved. Okay. Then, if you see nuclear DNA undergoes homologous recombination. Okay. As a result, sometimes it becomes difficult to identify an organism based on nuclear DNA sequence. But mitochondrial DNA does not undergo recombination. Same is the case for your chloroplast DNA. Chloroplast DNA also does not undergo recombination. As a result, chloroplast and mitochondrial DNA are more conserved, and that is why they are used in DNA barcoding. Okay. Now, you may ask me, is it ever going to replace the traditional taxonomy for species identification? That means we all know that organisms are identified based on some traditional morphological taxonomic tools only. Now, DNA barcoding is a recent technique. So, it is a very valid question whether it is going to replace the traditional taxonomy. The answer is no. Why? Because DNA barcoding is best used as a complement to traditional morphological methods. Okay? It is never going to replace the classical taxonomy. Now see, since I am from botany background, so I will tell you the methods for identification of a plant. How do we identify a plant for the first time? Suppose this part comes under the alpha taxonomy. Okay. Now, when we collect a particular plant with its reproductive parts, flower, fruits, etc., we prepare herbarium. Okay, and we dissect the flower, we study different floral characters, then we try to match those floral characters and other morphological characters with some existing identification keys. Like Bentham and Hooker's keys are very popular for plant identification. So if we find that there is a match, you can easily identify a particular plant species. Now, suppose you could not identify the plant based on those identification keys, then you will send it to some renowned herbaria like Botanical Survey of India Herbaria at Sidhpur, Howrah, BSI. Then if BSI also fails to identify the species, you can send it to Royal Botanic Garden Herbaria at Kew, UK. Okay. If they also fail to identify the species, that means there is a high probability that it is a new species. So you will be asked to propose a name for that particular plant following the rule of International Code of Nomenclature for Algae, Fungi and Plants. And that particular herbarium sheet will be stored as a holotype. Okay. Now, this is a traditional method of taxonomy for plant identification. Okay. Now, in DNA barcoding, okay, how DNA barcoding will assist or complement the traditional method of taxonomy. Sometimes it becomes difficult to identify a plant. Suppose the reproductive parts are not available when you collected the plant. So you could find only a particular leaf, and based on the morphology of the leaf, you could not identify the plant. But you can easily extract its DNA. You need only a small portion of the leaf, and you can extract DNA, and you can amplify the marker region using some set of known primers. Then you can go for sequencing. Then you can perform BLAST, you can perform phylogenetic analysis, and you will be able to identify the plant very easily. But the sequence, the DNA sequence of that particular plant must be deposited by someone else, okay, in the database. It must be already available in the database. Then only when you will perform BLAST, it will show some significant match. Okay, that is why we perform the DNA barcoding studies of our local endemic species, so that in a later stage, when some worker, he tries to identify a particular plant or any organism based on those marker DNA sequence, he finds some significant match in the database. So another important thing is, sometimes morphological taxonomy fails to distinguish the difference between some closely related species, or morphological taxonomy might have considered them two individuals as a same species, but you may find some significant differences in their DNA sequences. So you can propose that no, there is a significant difference in their DNA sequence, so they may be segregated. Like one particular plant, there are several examples. Like I'm citing one example, Machilus gamblae, that is the host plant for Muga silkworm. It has got around 7 ecotypes in Assam itself. Okay, their leaf morphology looks so different, it becomes difficult to identify the species only based on the leaf morphology. So in such case, the DNA barcoding study may help us in identification such species. Then, advantages of DNA barcoding. Okay, as we have already discussed, species identification needs taxonomic skills. Like if I want to identify a particular plant species, I must know some taxonomic terminology, some taxonomic characters. Suppose someone tells you the aspiration is imbricate, placentation is exile or marginal. Okay, stamens didynamous, or suppose syngenesis, synandras. So these terminologies are not very common to a layman, so or any other biologist. Okay, so any biologist will not be able to identify if he is not a skilled taxonomist. But any biologist can extract its DNA, and he can run a PCR reaction, and he can do the sequencing, and based on the DNA sequence, he can identify the species easily. Only condition is someone must have deposited the sequence earlier in the database. Okay, then only the significant match will be found. Now, this is the advantage, because without having some good taxonomic skill, you can go for species identification. Then, as we have already discussed, that in a juvenile stage or at a larval stage, morphotaxonomists find it difficult to identify the species because most of the morphotaxonomic keys are based on their reproductive stage. So if the reproductive stages are absent, it becomes difficult to identify the species. Okay. Now, if you find that one butterfly is in its larval stage and for morphotaxonomists it has become difficult, so you can easily extract its DNA and you can identify. Then the DNA barcoding can help in checking the illegal activities, like timbers can be easily identified, some forest products can be easily identified. Otherwise it becomes difficult because after cutting a tree into some timbers, it becomes difficult to identify what is that particular plant species. So we can extract DNA from the timber and it can be identified easily. So to check the illegal activities. Then exotic products can be identified. Then frauds and adulterations can be identified easily. Suppose in Triphala, one Ayurvedic medicine, I'm just citing one example. Triphala must have only 3 components, that is Terminalia cebula, Terminalia bellerica, and Phyllanthus emblica. And if you find, you can extract DNA from those Triphala, and the species which are there in the Triphala can be identified easily. So adulteration can be checked. Similarly, turmeric, okay, whether some other plants are mixed with turmeric, that can also be identified. So in this way, we can we can explain the advantages of DNA barcoding. Limitations, obviously each and every technique has got some limitations, and DNA barcoding is not an exception. So one limitation is concentration of DNA at a site is influenced by the physical parameters of the area. Like one species is present at a particular location in a very shady place, and the same plant or same organism is present in a very sunny area. Okay, so their DNA content may vary, and when you apply the same procedure for DNA extraction, the yield may not be different, yield may not be the same, and which may influence the result. Okay. Then incomplete barcode libraries, like for endemic species, the DNA barcode sequences are not reported in the databases. So it becomes difficult to identify the endemic species only based on DNA barcoding. So that is why it is important to study the DNA barcoding for endemic species and deposit it in some repository in some renowned databases like NCBI GenBank, so that our future generations or our future workers can easily identify those endemic species based on the DNA sequence of those marker regions. Then technological bias, like certain errors such as sampling errors, primer bias, contamination issues, etc. can be there in the process. This is obvious. Then lack of standardization. There is no common method that this method is good for DNA extraction. These are the best set of primers which can be used for DNA barcoding studies, or only these markers are best for DNA barcoding. There is no standard method kind of thing. Okay. And another limitation is that sometimes you may find mismatches between the conventional identification and the barcode based identification. It may happen. That is why only barcode will not serve the purpose for species identification. So both DNA barcoding and morphological taxonomy must complement each other. Okay, and it can be also used to study the richness or diversity of a particular species. Like if we wrongly identified a particular species and we have reported that in this particular locality, this particular species is identified, and using DNA barcoding, you could find that no, this is not that particular species. This is some other species. So it may lead to some errors in the study of diversity. Okay, so this is all about DNA barcoding. I hope you will find this topic interesting. Since the topic was DNA barcoding, so I did not put my contact details in my title slide. So you can scan this particular QR code using QR code scanner from your mobile phone, and you can contact me if you have any confusion. So thank you.